There's a man in this story you would have walked right past. Old coat, held together with a safety pin, a used car, the same quiet table at the same spot every morning, a cup of coffee, and an English muffin with peanut butter. He pumped gas for a living. Later, he swept floors. For decades, nobody in his town gave him a second look, and that was exactly the point, because the man in the patch coat was hiding something. Not a scandal, not a lie, a secret worth $8 million. And almost no one, not his neighbors, not his friends, not even his own family, had the faintest idea. Picture waking up as this man. You don't own a single thing that turns heads. Your coat is older than some of your coworkers. When it tears, you don't replace it. You pin it back together and keep going. You drive a small, plain car until it's practically an antique. Well into your 90s, you're still out back cutting your own firewood. If you earn $50 this week, you find a way to live on 10. To everyone watching, your life looks like a life of not enough. No vacations to brag about, no new gadgets, no shortcuts, just the same quiet routine, year after year after year. And here's the strange part. While your life looked like nothing was happening, something enormous was happening, silently, in the background, every single day. The man's name was Ronald Read, a lifelong Vermonter, the first person in his family to ever finish high school, and he never set foot in a college classroom. He served in the Army in World War II, came home, married, raised 2 kids, and went to work. Gas station attendant and mechanic for about 25 years, then a part-time janitor at the local J.C. Penney for 17 more. Never a big paycheck, not once in his life. Then in 2014, Ronald Read died at 92. And when they opened his safe deposit box, they found it, a stack of stock certificates 5 inches thick. Shares in at least 95 different companies. Add it all up, and the man in the safety pin coat was worth around $8 million. His stepson said the family was tremendously surprised. That might be the understatement of the decade. So how does a janitor quietly out-earn people who spent their whole careers on Wall Street? Not with a secret, not with luck, not with some genius nobody else had. He did something that sounds almost boring. Ronald Read bought small pieces of big, simple companies he actually understood. Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, J.P. Morgan, General Electric, Dow. Companies that make things people buy in good times and bad. He didn't chase the hot new stock. He didn't touch anything he couldn't explain. And he only bought companies that paid him a dividend, a small slice of the profits mailed to him, just for owning the shares. Then he did the thing most people never do. He took those dividend checks and bought even more shares, over and over, in booming markets and crashing ones alike. He'd research companies at the public library. He read the Wall Street Journal, and once he bought something, he mostly just held it for decades. One of his certificates went all the way back to 1959. 39 shares of a power company, bought for about $2,300. He never sold it. By the time he died, that one tiny slip of paper was worth over $10,000. And here's a detail that says everything about him. Because he kept the actual paper certificates locked in a vault, selling a stock was a genuine hassle. A trip to the bank, then to the broker. So he almost never did. His own reluctance to sell quietly protected him from the single biggest mistake investors make: panic. Now here's the real engine. And it's not the stock picking, it's time. Ronald Read started saving and investing young, in his 20s, and he simply never stopped. Not for 30 years, not for 50, longer. When you reinvest your dividends, something quiet and powerful takes over. Your shares earn dividends. Those dividends buy more shares. Those new shares earn their own dividends, which buy even more shares. It's a snowball, and at first it's almost insultingly slow. For years it barely looks like it's moving, but give it enough decades and the curve stops crawling and starts to climb. Commentators who've studied his story estimate that investing a few $100s a month at ordinary long-term stock returns for 60-plus years is roughly enough to reach his $8 million. Not because any single year was magic, but because he stacked one ordinary year on top of another and let them compound. And no, he wasn't right about everything. He owned Lehman Brothers, the bank that collapsed to zero in the 2008 crash. He just owned so many companies that the winners, growing for decades, quietly buried the losers. That's the math almost nobody has the patience to see all the way through. Now, before you go out and buy 95 stocks and a safety pin, let's be honest, because most people take the wrong lesson from this story. First, you're hearing about Ronald Read because he won. You don't hear about the thousands of people who picked their own stocks and lost. That's survivorship bias, and it quietly warps how we judge these stories. Second, buying dozens of individual companies yourself is genuinely risky. Read's winners were big enough to swallow his Lehmans. Plenty of people aren't so lucky. That's why most experts point beginners somewhere far simpler, a low-cost index fund that owns hundreds of companies at once, so you're never betting everything on a single name. Third, his result leaned on things you can't fully control. Starting extremely young, living into his 90s, and decades of a mostly rising market. Change any one of those, and the ending changes a lot. And there's a human cost worth naming out loud. Some people hear this story and feel inspired. Others feel a little sad. A man who saved almost everything and gave nearly all of it away only after he was gone. There's no single right answer there. Money is supposed to buy a life along the way, not just a bigger number at the end. So if it isn't really about the stocks, what's the actual lesson? It comes down to a handful of quiet habits, and every one of them is a choice, not a talent. He spent far less than he earned. Not for a year, for a lifetime. He didn't buy things to look successful. He let people underestimate him, and he genuinely didn't care. He was patient in a way that feels almost impossible today. He measured his money in decades, not days, and once his money was working, he left it alone. No panic selling, no chasing, no, just this once. That's the part that's so easy to miss. Ronald Read's edge was never in his brain. It was in his temperament. He simply refused to do the dumb things for 60 straight years. So here's the uncomfortable and weirdly freeing truth. You will probably never pump gas in a patched coat, but the invisible path Ronald Read walked is still wide open to almost anyone. Spend meaningfully less than you make. Invest the difference in something boring and diversified. Then do the hardest thing in the world. Leave it alone and let time carry it. It's slow. It's unglamorous. It will feel like nothing is happening for years. And that feeling that nothing is happening is the exact feeling Ronald Read lived with every single day, right up until the day his whole town found out what he'd quietly built. You don't need a huge salary. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need to look rich. You just need to start early, keep it simple, and be almost unreasonably patient. The wealthiest person in the room is often the one you'd never suspect. That's the whole idea behind this channel, the wealth you don't see. If this story shifted something for you, subscribe. Because next time, we're breaking down another hidden fortune and the simple habit that quietly built it.